I'm a drummer, basically. And one thing about drummers that I think may be unique is that we're inclusive instead of exclusive. And every other instrument seems to be basically exclusive. There's always wrong notes. But drummers, I like it when I'd get a drum student who basically couldn't afford drums, and he could afford a pair of drumsticks, and I'd say go around and just play the world. And just remember, some things break, and if you try playing your TV or something with your sticks, and don't pretend that you're a rock drummer at the time like that, but if you just go out and hit things, and usually if you can hit two sounds, I think two sounds are the key, and then imitate them with your voice, like fit-do, fit-do. I haven't ever played on this one. I still am into percussion, but in the last 7 years, I've gotten really into all the various guitars. One of the things we were talking about, the way people scroll on their phones, the doom part of it is just, I guess, kind of the fear that you're just going around in a big enough circle that you're not noticing that you're in a circle. What I wanted to have was 4 single notes in a circle around each double note. So that what this allows you to do is to go from any single note to any double note. And what you do with it, whether you play them together like a chord or you just go a roll or something that has 2 notes in it. It grew from that moment where I just said I'd like more of it, so I put it on there enough to fill up a whole CD. And then I decided I'd like to see what it sounds like with itself, but not in unison. So I came up with playing them on multiple CD players. The thing about this kind of music that struck me, and always has struck me, it's not in a key. All the pitches are basically equal, and they were careful in there, even though the rules don't say you can't go back and forth between the same notes if you like those 2 forever and never even go to the other 10. So it doesn't really give you a sense of right and wrong notes. One thing about these instruments that you can't really fret and play it at the same time. It's more like a harp. And of course you can, go play this one and back and forth. But as a guy who took up guitars at basically 75 years old, I like this part of it a lot more than I like this part, which I've gotten past the pain, but I'm still basically no good. But the good news is I don't have any habits about what goes with what. So in this case, if I'm playing one note here with either hand and any 2, I can go from any one of these to any one of these, and I can go back and forth. And of course accidents do happen when you use techniques like this, and I'm not terribly bothered. And if I like an accident, I might break all the rules I made right away in the interest of the music. So these were the ones that were octaves, and so I tuned them in 9ths and 7ths, wide intervals. And then these two would be unisons. So I tuned them, one major second and one minor second. So I had 8 different notes here. And these, which are normally tuned G, C, E, A, with this string higher than this one, that's one of the odd things about traditional ukulele tuning. I just altered those enough so they were the 4 other notes. One of my goals with these kind of pieces, and the fact that I can play, if I can play it on a guitar, you know it's pretty easy. And I think people shouldn't have to wait even a day to enjoy playing music and to not be saying, boy, I'll like this once I get good. One of the things about free improvisation is there's no clear ending. So when you heard an ending, you'd stop. And then if it kept going, you'd come back in again. What I noticed a long time ago about serial music is that you could take 2 pieces that really were unrelated and play them at the same time and they didn't clash. One of the reasons is there's no root, there's no king. It's a true democracy. All the notes are, there's a tendency for lower notes to be more important than higher notes in terms of kind of controlling what can happen. The other thing that we have in general in our music is a fixed tempo of some kind, like a beat. That's something that we all love, but one thing that is pretty irritating is to hear 2 different beats. They can only be slightly different, you just can't stand the tension of it. So I think it's important that people graduate to a more inclusive kind of music that you can play multiple pieces at the same time, and a lot of times they're very interesting together. So in this case, I did that with the piece itself, but I arranged their 7 movements in all kinds of different ways, and basically though, just to make sure that you heard them more than once. These things were improvised within the framework of the piece, and they didn't really do the same thing twice. They played the same notes, and after you hear it maybe 1 CD's worth of times, 7 things 5 or 6 times, you'll start to hear relationships. I went to the University of Illinois where they had a lot of new music. One time I was at a concert where John Cage was the featured guy. And so it was intermission, and I went outside the hall and down is inside the music building, came out the bottom of the stairs by the downstairs of the music hall, and I heard all these crashes and looked in the door, and the wife of one of the faculty members was backstage throwing music stands out on stage and yelling, "You're a charlatan," at John Cage. So it was an exciting place to be, and it led me to think I wanted to be a professional guy playing that kind of stuff. The university had just put in a new 4-track recording system like the Beatles had just gotten. You know, it was state of the art. So we had 4 separate rooms. No video connection, no visuals. Everybody used headphones. You could hear all 4 rooms. And what would happen is every 15 minutes you'd have, you didn't necessarily play each session. You'd have say, okay, I play now in this room, and I have 15 minutes off, and then I play in that room. You didn't know who was in any of the other rooms. You get in there and they'd say, okay, everybody ready? And I think they left the lights on at least this time, but they'd say, okay, rolling. And 15 minutes later, they'd say, cut. And it was called the 4-room sessions, and we edited that for like a couple years. And that's Grace and I were together then. She and every week we'd have a day where we'd go in and work together, me and this other guy. We'd each do that, and we'd hand it to the other person and say, okay, this is it. Don't change this. And we'd change everything again. We did that week after week. The original name of the record was going to be Iowa Love Rhythms. So, because we were a new couple and we were testing it in all manner of new ways to make sure it worked. We wound up just deciding to make this record that was just going to have his side and my side. So my side was called Side Chop because I tended to edit like a drummer. Like the best thing that could happen as far as I was concerned was a cymbal crash, because you could just say, okay, cut it right there, and you're somewhere else, you know. And he was into overlapping things, so his was called Side Flow. There was only, I think, one nearly complete session that we left all alone completely, and it's still my favorite one on there. We didn't think we were imitating Miles Davis, but it was what he was doing at the time too. Recording these big sessions and then editing into the final record. The thing about Iowa was, if I was going to be a professional musician in Iowa, I'd have to go on the road, basically, because there's not enough people in too many places. It's not like a city where you can work every night in a different part of town if that's what you're doing. But when I came here, I had connections at UCSD, and I went and asked if there's anything I could get, like money or a place to put my instruments, because I have a lot of instruments. Pauline Oliveras was the head of the Center for Music Experiment, and she gave me a Quonset hut, which I think I had for about 3 years, which was a real saved me, even though I didn't ever get paid by them, but they also would hire me. So I did get paid a little bit for Sonar and different concerts, and I was part of the scene here at UCSD. But the thing that kind of bothered me here was that it was such for obvious reasons, a great town to do other things than music, like surfing, just going to the beach, going to sporting events, going to concerts. There, if somebody came to town that you'd heard of, it didn't even matter if you liked them. If you'd heard of somebody, you'd go to see what they actually did. And here, of course, you could choose any given day 5 people that you'd kind of like to see and not go to any of them. When we first moved here, somehow, I don't know how he even knew who I was, I got a call out of nowhere, and it was Jim French. Introduced himself to me and said he had a house party in Del Mar, and could I come and play? So Grace and I went to this thing, and he turned out to be a free jazz player, really good. But then Jim, out of nowhere, called me up and said that the government had a program called the bill it was based on, I think it was called CETA 6, and they came up with a way to pay artists, and specifically musicians, but other artists too, government money, weekly money to play music. That was really important for me, because I'd been getting occasional gigs that were, appreciated, but none of them had much to do with creative music, and this was pretty wide open creative, and it did have 2 bass players, Diamond on piano, Jim on all manner of odd instruments, mostly saxophone related, and Richie Flores on tenor sax, and me. Jim French was kind of like Eric Dolphy in the sense that nobody else like him. Before they built Horton Plaza, we had a building down there. One of the things we did was every night, it was kind of an art gallery. Artists were included in this. And we'd play little concerts there. And never got big crowds, but we got paid a weekly salary. And they'd send us all over town playing weird gigs. Diamanda and I got sent several times to a home for severely retarded people. She was playing piano, and she could sing kind of like Bessie Smith really, really well. That was like the one style of normal music that she was really good at. Her main thing was very out there, avant-garde, and kind of more expressionistic, powerful, scary almost stuff at times. Jim and I would get sent places. Richie Flores and I got sent across the street to McDonald's to play like outside McDonald's with like a coin, something for tips, even though we were getting paid. They were showing us basically the work that we would get if we didn't have C to 6. That was the kind of gigs we get to make a living, and I don't know how Jim got his gigs, and Dave could repair instruments. Millard and Dresser both were in the CETA program, but they were in different bands. Diane Mosier was another person who was doing that, and there was even a big band out of the musicians union. I couldn't make money, I couldn't make a living playing avant-garde music. It didn't make me quit going to concerts or quit loving it or even playing it whenever the opportunity came along. But I was forced by the situation to do a whole lot of other things. And some of them really worked out good, like teaching. At universities I taught, teaching students that can already play is not the same as teaching a little kid. One good thing about getting old, you don't have to follow the rules, anymore about how fast you have to go to be a drummer and all those things. And even the one that I think one of the worst things that's happened in my lifetime in music is taking away tempo as a part of the conversation. Like that when we played Body and Soul, that beat wasn't there because the metronome says it's there. It was there because we were ready to play it. And I think the great ballad players on any instrument, and especially drummers who can. There's kind of two kinds of drummers. The ones who want, which I like too, laying it down and everybody dances to your groove and gets real. That's nice too. But the one kind of just kind of like, okay, who's going to say that's where one is? All the guys who did the best, I think you'd agree with this, were the guys who you tell them to play and they say, okay, that's why I'm here. It's like on the thing we did of mine, I don't know the difference. If you play something better than I wrote, I'm not going to fire you. So I think that's the main thing I stand for is freedom and letting people be themselves. Everybody should have a drummer that they know and not somebody who forces them to play his favorite songs, just play together. Drums can speak to anybody and so can anybody on any instrument once they control it.